Hello, hello. Welcome back or welcome to the Yogi Roth Show. Really appreciate all of the support and love for this podcast. If you've missed any of the past episodes, make sure you go to yogiroth.com/podcast and check them out, or wherever you are subscribing to podcasts. The last probably 2 months really to me have been really powerful conversations. So check them out. You got a psychologist and Dr. Michael Gervais talking anxiety and depression in college sports. Mac Brown, a Hall of Fame coach, formerly at Texas where he won a national title. Brenda Tracy, inspiring student athletes all across the country to end sexual and relationship violence on college campuses with her Set the Expectation program. And the last couple of weeks, we've had current student athletes in Tanner Mangum and Mackenzie Milton of BYU and Central Florida, respectively. So really fun conversations around this sport of college football. And if you want any more on that, just go to yogiroth.com and subscribe to the How Great Is Ball newsletter, where every week I try to give you 3 takeaways from my journeys in college football. I'm doing a game, doing a studio show every week on the Pac-12 networks, and there's little things that always don't make it into a broadcast or don't make it into a podcast or on a social media, and I try to share with you some of those things that hopefully you can apply to your life. And of course, I want to hear from you guys. If there's things you want in this podcast, we've got some great emails back from you of potential guests, ways to improve. I'm coachable, let me know. And feel free to not only subscribe and rate this podcast, but leave us a review. It's actually huge regarding just the popularity of this podcast so more people can listen. To me, this doesn't have to be the number one podcast in sports, but hopefully it's one that a lot of people listen to, and it's something that can inspire, impact them and their communities. And that is exactly what I think today does. The guest is Trent Dilfer. Many of you know him as a 14-year vet in the NFL, Super Bowl winning quarterback with the Baltimore Ravens, a Pro Bowl quarterback, or even ESPN analyst working on Monday Night Football. I know him in a completely different way, or maybe I should say in addition to. And Trent and I coach together at the Elite 11. He's the head coach. I'm on the staff. I also host that show, and it's a documentary you can see on NFL Network or at elite11.com, where we take the top quarterbacks in the country and try to inspire them, teach the game, and give them tools so they can add to their already gifted toolbox and just see if we can improve their perspective on life, their quarterback game, their leadership qualities, and of course a variety of intangibles that we like to call beyond the X's and O's. And I've been thinking about having Trent on for 3 years since we started this podcast. It's been a while, but finally felt like, let's bring him on. And we dive into a variety of different topics, from his path, his passions, the power of what listening and learning can do. And of course, we talk about the game that impacted both he and my life as well. So I think there's a lot of things. So get out your notepad or just sit back and relax, or maybe enjoy this while you're working out. But the bottom line is, Trent, to me, is really a 1%er. He's somebody that I think is a paradigm shifter in a lot of different areas, and someone I consider family. So I'm going to get out of the way, and here is Trent Dilfer.
All right. Couldn't be more excited for this next guest. We go way back, and we're going to take you way back and then bring you to the present and talk all things football, quarterback, life, and I think you'll leave inspired with somebody I consider family. Trent Dilfer, welcome to the show, man.
Yogi, thanks for having me, pal.
You got it, brother. You got it. All right. So I like starting this way with people that I have a history with, because I think it's just kind of fun to put you on the spot right off the bat. And I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to give my answer the same exact one. So the question is, do you remember the first time we met, and what is your recollection of that meeting?
I think the first time, was in the Bay Area at the Elite 11 Regional. Is that correct? That day in, where were we? Palo Alto?
Yeah.
At Stanford.
Yep.
Am I right? Is that the
you
first
are.
day? And I remember you had tons of juice. I remember you were running the show with all the quarterbacks and getting them energized and kind of getting that Pete Carroll energy going to the practice field. And I looked over, I think I remember telling Brian Stump, maybe I said, that guy. I said, that guy, he's a difference maker.
Well, I love it. My recollection, I was talking to Tanner Mangum earlier on a podcast a couple weeks ago, and I can remember that day like yesterday. We're in this tiny, cramped Northern California hotel room making the pitch. I'm part of the pitch to Trent Dilfer, you, to be the head coach of the Elite 11. And all of us are probably like 5'8" to 5'11" in the room. Here you come in, towering over everybody. It was a very nervous room, and you sit and you had this ability to diffuse the entire room. And to me, great coaches have that, or great coordinators have that when they walk into a room and let's just say they're the only change on the staff. And everybody has thoughts and anxiety, and you rolled in and you listened. And then we went to the practice field, and I'll remember this one, I think, for the rest of my life. You're like, I'm just going to observe today. So you're observing. You got jeans on, a collared shirt, and a now famous clipboard. And that observation, Trent, lasted, I don't know, maybe 3 minutes before you just started going, man. It was awesome to watch.
Yeah, I have a hard time just observing, as you know well now.
So I want to start there. So we meet in Northern California, and for those that don't know the Elite 11, go to elite11.com and check it out. But it's basically American Idol for high school quarterbacks. And you became the head coach. And I thought you became involved instantaneously, but obsessed almost just as quick. And I want to know why you wanted to get involved that much. You're a guy who had won a Super Bowl, been a Pro Bowl, you played 14 years in the league, you didn't necessarily need the gig, you're doing TV, you got a great life going. And here you jump into this grassroots space as though it was your lifelong journey, and you probably achieved those lifelong dreams already. So, have you looked back over the last 8 or so years as the head coach of the Elite 11 and said, this is why I was so into the opportunity to be a part of the next generation?
Well, I think the word that pops in my head is passion. I don't think you're wrong when you say obsession. I think it has been an obsession, but, my whole life I've had good people around me, and they've always mentored and encouraged me to find things you're passionate about and then pursue them with everything that you have. And when I left football in 2007 and went into TV, it was good. I mean, the TV career was fun. It gave you a platform to talk. It gave me a platform to talk about stuff that I cared about. It allowed me to coach through the TV, which I valued, but I would never say I was passionate about doing TV. That day in Northern California sparked a passion in helping young men fulfill their potential, and not just athletically. I think if anybody that follows us knows what we do, we're really trying to help these young men reach their life potential and be difference makers. And what quickly became quarterback centric and trying to, develop our team to be the best evaluators and the best teachers and the best coaches and give these guys the best experience, I think really grew into, well, let's create the best culture that can be a model for other people to come alongside in the grassroots space and change the way they're doing programs and really attack kids in a good way, holistically, attack their progression, their learning process holistically and develop the whole human through the avenue of sport. And I think that's what we've been able to do. I'm still as passionate about it today as I was that first day in Northern California. I think we've learned a lot. Obviously, me and you have talked hundreds of hours about what the future of this is and the impact. We've learned from our mistakes. I know I have. And I think the next 10 years are going to be better than the first. But really just the passion of seeing a young man who's playing quarterback and his whole life, his whole identity is wrapped up around this position at this particular moment of his time, and having a 30,000 foot view of saying, hey, we can really help this kid not just become a better player, because we do. We want them to be the best football players they can be, but we can use this moment in time to touch into his soul a little bit deeper and help him realize there's something way bigger in life than playing quarterback and being the dude and making millions of dollars, that he can impact a world that is obviously very broken right now, and a world that needs difference makers that are influential. We need wise people. We need thoughtful people. We need caring people, empathetic people, and I think we're trying to do that at Elite 11 of helping these young kids become those type of young men.
Yeah, well, very well said. So the only rule I have on this podcast is to ask questions I don't know the answers to. And you and I go deep. So it's hard to prepare for this and think about questions to ask you. So where I want to go next, Trent, is You told me stories about playing catch with your mom in the backyard and throwing it so hard that you'd break the ring off her finger. But I want to know, when was the first time you fell in love with the game, if you did indeed fall in love with the game as a player?
That's a good question. My stepdad, I had two great dads. I had my birth father, my real father, who lived 20 minutes from where my mom and stepdad lived, and they had joint custody. So I had a really good childhood with two dads in my life. My real dad was more the academic, very thoughtful, deep thinker type guy. My stepdad was a great man, Cal grad, went to football, still alive, played football at Cal, became a football coach, and became part of my life when I was 5. And I was the ball boy for the high school team, the ball boy for the junior college team that he coached at. And I think I fell in love with it. My first memories of just saying, gosh, this is such a great game, was sitting on the back of the buses in junior college going on road trips. We'd drive from Cabrillo Junior College, which is in Aptos, California, to Hartnell or Gilroy or somewhere in the Bay Area, and sit in the back of the bus with these JC football players and hear their stories, and probably hear some inappropriate stuff too, but the camaraderie of men getting ready to battle, I was always fired up about that. And then going back and, 16 millimeter tape is what we used to watch back then. And my stepdad would have me clip it off. You'd actually cut the tape and tape it to the washer and dryer, and then put it on the spindles to watch cut-ups. Those are true. That's why they call them cut-ups. And I would watch, short yards offense on the washer and dryer in the utility room. I'd watch movement pass. I would watch third down pass, and just falling in love with the complexities of the game as well as the camaraderie of the game. Gosh, I was probably 10 years old. I'm guessing a little bit, but I was probably 10 when the love affair first started.
Wow. I think that's interesting. I had a chance to spend some time with Kevin Carroll, a guy that we both know, and if you don't know him, go get the book, The Right Around the Ball.
Kevin's the best.
Kevin's the best. And he just did an interview with Kobe Bryant, and they talked about play, and they talked about how Kobe coaches his kids, I'm guessing here, I think around like 8 or 10 years old basketball team, and he gives them an imagination period every day of practice, where for 10 minutes, just go imagine. And I know for me, it was in the backyard, coming off a screen, hitting like a 12-foot jumper to win the game. And if I missed it, I got fouled and go to the line. If you missed a free throw, there was a lane violation. Like, you always won the game. So I'm curious for you, once you fall in love at 10, then did you have these imagination periods where you'd be, throwing game winners in the backyard? And you were a multi-sport athlete, so maybe you were, throwing down a 360 windmill dunk. I don't know, but did you have that? And if so, do you feel that helped shape and gave you some clarity to the dreams that you may have had?
Absolutely. I've never really. It's cool that Kobe does that. I've never heard of imagination periods, but there's definitely times in your young athletic journey where those times are probably as valuable as any skill development that you have or athletic development that you have. I mean, vividly can remember playing Wayman Tisdale one-on-one in my front yard. Now, Wayman Tisdale played for the University of Oklahoma and was my favorite basketball player for whatever reason. But I would play one-on-one as if he was banging into me and putting his knee in my back, and I was back down the post. And that's where I developed my fadeaway, and then I would drop step and dunk on him, and I would even talk smack to Wayman Tisdale. And I met Wayman before he passed. I actually told him the story. He laughed very hard. But I vividly remember that. I remember playing wiffle ball with my buddy, and for whatever reason, I was always the Yankees, and I would switch hit. If Don Manley was left-handed, I'd switch hit and hit lefty because that's what Don Manley did. And I remember being Don Manley or Dave Winfield. I mean, those were my guys. And in football, no doubt, I can't begin to tell you how many drops I took against nobody and avoided the pass rush and rolled to my right and ripped fire in the back of the end zone. Even though there's nobody else on the little strip of grass in our front yard, it's just me and the dog. But I could visualize all the other players out there. And I never had a doubt that I'd be a professional athlete. A lot of people told me I wouldn't be. But that was always in my mind's eye how I saw myself, and it ended up, coming to fruition.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. I can remember being a kid, and I was in fourth grade, and my basketball coach said, "Hey, Yogi, what do you want to do when you get older?" I said, "I'm going to play in the NBA." And he laughed, and he goes, "Hey, everybody, Yogi's going to get his MBA." And it's probably a compliment to like maybe my intellect, but I took it as he's the first guy to ever shoot down my dream, to ever say I wasn't going to play pro or play at a high level. And it drove me. It frustrated me. And I want to transition to that for you of people telling you can't, right? And we see this with high school student athletes all the time, college, even at times professionally. When did you, if ever, transition from I'm going to prove them wrong to I'm going to prove myself right?
I think that's always a yin and yang, a back and forth. I deeply appreciate the chip on the shoulder guys that to this day, they're highly successful professionals and they still have a chip on their shoulder. I do think motivation plays part of your journey. I also believe in the side that says, it's more about pursuing excellence and being afraid of failure or saying can instead of can't, however you want to articulate it. I think both are valuable parts, and I think I've used both. I had a lot of people say I couldn't. For those that don't know the story, I was recruited mainly as a tight end, outside linebacker by Pac-12, that was back then Pac-10 schools, and West Coast schools. Only Fresno State and Northern Arizona and Santa Clara, who dropped their football program a year later, offered me as a quarterback. And the only reason Fresno did is because they saw me play basketball against their number one quarterback recruit, and I went for 44 on them and dunked a few times. So people told me I couldn't play college quarterback, and they told me I couldn't play in the NFL. But there's also a lot of people who said I could, and a lot of times me telling myself that I could or why not. I think both are really valuable. I'm not on the side that it's one or the other. I think it's both help our development.
Okay, so you're at Fresno State, and you go through this process of kind of figuring out who you are, what you're about. Because I think athletes have this all the time, and now more than ever, is we have these conversations with ourselves, right? They go from as a kid, you're playing William and Tinsdale, to you're in college, and you're at a crossroads. You're about to cross a threshold to go down a road that is going to allow for average success, or go down a completely new path, which is going to allow for elite success. What was the inner dialogue of Trent Dilfer like when that decision was made, and when was that decision made? When was that decision made?
I don't know if I have an exact answer on that. I know that I had so many good people around me. I had a legendary head coach. And in fact, yesterday I was with his son, who's one of my best friends, Kevin Sweeney. My head coach was Jim Sweeney. And just a legend in the game, and taught me so much about being a leader and toughness and, all the things that helped define my career. But I had Jeff Tedford as my offensive coordinator. I was the first of 6 quarterbacks he developed as first-round talent. I had 9 guys, skill position guys at Fresno that ended up playing in the NFL. I had, great teammates, and that made me look better than I was. And I say that because I think what happened was it was an eventual shift from I'm just trying to survive. I remember my freshman year playing when the starter got hurt, and I was literally just trying to survive. Trying to get the play call right, trying not to be nervous at the line of scrimmage, trying not to look down at the center's butt when I took the snap and look downfield. I mean, remedial stuff. To the next year, because of how many good people were around me, I'm starting to thrive a little bit. Like, I'm getting better every day. Every day something's happening that's giving me more confidence. To the following year where not only do I think I'm pretty good, my coaches and teammates think I'm good, but there's 30 scouts at every practice saying that I'm pretty good. And I just think it's that gradual progression of your own confidence building, the right situation around you and other people helping you out. And then at some point just realize, no, I am good. I do have this, and I can go wherever the next step is and thrive and be what people are saying I can be. So I don't know if I'm answering your question specifically, but it was just a journey of growing confidence, people having their confidence grow around me. And then ultimately the only way that happened was because I was surrounded by so many good people.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because in college, that sounds like a natural progression for the most part, right? If you're going to paint a picture, it's come in, swim a little bit, figure it out, thrive. And then you transition to the NFL and the sixth pick, one of the top picks in the draft, you go to Tampa Bay, and, progression-based thinker would be like, all right, he's just going to continue to grow. And yeah, there'll be a couple stumbling blocks along the way, but you'll continue to grow. And one of my most endearing stories about you, I think, is when you go to the NFL and you're struggling, and you and your wife, and correct me if I get this story wrong, you walk into a restaurant and the fans there are not very thrilled with the performance on the field, boo you and your wife as you go to the restaurant, and you choose to sit down and continue to have your meal. Curious, A, if that's the accurate depiction of that story, and then most curious about when you get into the car. What's the conversation like with your wife when you leave that restaurant?
Yeah, no, you told the story well. They booed us at the hostess stand, the entire restaurant. We said, no, I want that table right in the middle of all these people booing me. I say this jokingly. You've heard me say it, but I really believe you have to be a legend in your own mind. I really believe you got to believe you're better than everybody else believes you are. I really believe that you have to have conviction that what you are doing, what you're feeling, how you're processing is more correct than what everybody else is. Now, my wife would joke that that's gotten me in more trouble than good. But it's also helped me get through moments like that. It's what helped me go from being the worst. And I was the worst player in the NFL my second year. Of all the players in the league, I was the very worst. To 2 years later being in the Pro Bowl and taking a franchise that had been in the playoffs in 17 years to the playoffs. So how do you do that? How do you get released or not? I actually was not cut in Tampa. They chose not to re-sign me, let me go to free agency. And I go to Baltimore. I'm the backup for the first time in my life. And the next thing you know, we're holding the Super Bowl trophy. So resilience, grit, perseverance, whatever words you want to put on it. When grit was finally defined to me, by Angela, it hit me so hard because that's really been the story of my athletic career, was that passion and perseverance to a long-range goal. But I guess I'm starting to have diarrhea of the mouth, but it's just this ability to inside of you say, I know what people are saying, I know what people are thinking, and I know what the evidence to this point shows, but they have no idea where I'm going. They don't know what I have in me. They don't know what I am able to overcome. And I think that's kind of, if somebody had to make me define my life in one word, it would be grit, not just in athletics, but in life. And I think that's been the reason why I've been able to have the peaks and valleys in my career and my life and end up taking bad situations and making them good.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting when, we talk about grit and where we learn through what goes on in our life, how we respond. We're in a different era now. In your era, you walked into a restaurant and got booed. Let's call it 200 people, and it sucked. But you sat down, you wore it, and it drove you. And as you said, like nobody knew what was going to come other than you. And clearly we know how the rest of your career played out extremely successfully. But in this era, not only is it 200, a student athlete now or an NFL player now could get 200,000 messages, people booing them through their mobile device. How do you think you would have dealt with that if you were playing in this era and something like that happened, which is on the regular every weekend in college and the NFL?
Yeah, I have a lot of empathy for these kids and what they go through. Because I don't know. I don't know the answer. I would hope that I would have had people around me that coached me up and helped me through it and allowed me to have perspective. But I I mean, Yogi, we could talk all day on this podcast and tell people stories of kids that we just knew. We knew they had no chance. Not because they're bad kids, not because they weren't talented, but because their self-view was already shaped by the mob. That's what I call the Twitterverse and all this stuff, the mob. I mean, the mob, unfortunately, is so loud in some of these kids' heads, they're never going to let it go. The ones that, I think the ones, I would hope I would be one of the kids that we've been around that has used social media for good. Chase Griffin is a kid that I think of, committed to UCLA, lives here in Texas. He's a kid that's been around Elite 11 forever and obviously has tons of followers and is very active on social media, but he chooses to use it for good and doesn't get caught up in all the other stuff, all the other noise that's on it. It's taking control of it, maybe, is how I would articulate it, instead of letting it control you. And that's way easier said than done. But I think that's what you have to do, is you have to control the message, not let the mob control the message.
Yeah, and that's a great segue. If people haven't seen it, with documentary on the Elite 11 this year, I don't know, it's on YouTube, it's on NFL Network, and a big theme for us, if you were there every day, and unfortunately in 44 minutes you don't get the full scope of everything that goes on, it's impossible. But the big theme for us this year was I am, we are. And a lot of times, when we look at high school quarterbacks' social media profiles, it's I am the number one pro prospect in the country. I am Scout.com's number one dual threat quarterback. And we took them through this exercise where they redefined themselves as more than a quarterback. And collectively, we, as the Elite 11 in its 20th year, we're making sure that our kids, understand that they can utilize the game to give them greater gifts throughout their life. And I bring that up because you talk about this mob and being defined by other people. When did you say, I'm going to be this, when you defined yourself post-career? And what's your advice when you talk to these athletes who I think a lot of times I'm talking to kids that graduating, transferring, still think they're going to start on Sundays and everyone's Kurt Warner, which is amazing. And I would never, put any negativity towards that thought. But there's also an element of, hey, man, I could use this game to set me up for my life due to the traits, the grit that it teaches me. So the question would be, Trent, when did you recognize that you wouldn't be defined by the game internally, post-career? And what do you talk to student athletes about in college and pro players who are so defined by this ball that they utilize versus, their essence of who they are?
So I think there's a lot of layers to this conversation. I'll make it as brief as I can. I think number one, I would never want to tell a kid, and I don't tell kids, hey, one day football is going to be over and you're going to realize it's not that important. Because that's just like crushing his dreams right off the get-go. And football is the most important thing in his life right now. Let's be real about that. I mean, kids are going to college to play football. Now they need to do well academically, and I'm a full believer in being a complete student athlete, but they're being paid to go play football. And let's play it as well as we can, and let's chase those dreams. But have perspective that it's part of your journey. It's not the journey. It's part of your journey. And the lessons learned as you succeed in this journey or have setbacks in this journey will largely determine how you handle the rest of your journey, which is life. What happened to me was after Baltimore, after we won the Super Bowl, for those who don't know the story, I was a free agent again, and I had turned down a contract extension in the midst of that Super Bowl run, not because of the financials of it. It was actually a really good deal. It was because I didn't want any distractions within the team as we were moving forward. And there were other people looking for extensions that year too. And I felt like if I took one and they didn't get offered one, it could hurt our team dynamic. Well, then they didn't think I played very well down the home stretch and they rescinded the offer. And Brad Johnson and Elvis Gerbach were two other free agent quarterbacks coming off good seasons, and they chose to make me number 3. And Brad said no and went to Tampa. Elvis said yes, came to Baltimore, and I was left on the street. So here I am, the first quarterback in the history of football to win the Super Bowl and then be cast aside by their team. And I got to Seattle where I ended up signing, and I'll speed this up, but just through a series of events, started realizing so quickly that no matter how successful you are, no matter what you achieve in football, if it begins to shape your identity, if it becomes to be the thing that either gives you value or devalues you, then you are headed down a really, really sketchy path. And I started noticing for a few years, and to me it's still one of the saddest things out there, are professional athletes, or let's even say professional businessmen, or let's even say high school Americans. And if you're one of these, you really need to check yourself. And if you're still telling stories and giving value to who you are because of what you once did more than what you are doing right now, you probably need to go see a counselor. Because as soon as we start living too much in the rearview mirror in the past, good or bad, it's robbing the people around us from everything we are right now. And for me to do that to my 3 daughters, or to my wife, or to my friends, or to my family, to live in the past on something I did, or let that affect me too much one way or the other, is just stealing from them. Because I have a lot to offer them. I have a lot to offer you as my friend, these high school kids. But what if all of the advice I gave was bitterness from my journey in football? Or what if I just told them, hey, do this like I did it? Neither of those would be very good. Instead, it's moving forward and living in the present, not letting what we did shape our past. So I don't know if that was the complete answer, but that's kind of my overall take on that. It's why, as you've been around me for 10 years, I very rarely talk to quarterbacks about what I did well. I mainly tell them the mistakes I made, how it helped me gain perspective, and how to help them not make those mistakes, both in life and on the football field. Because I don't want their identity to ever be shaped by what they're doing right now. I want it to be something way further ahead of the impact they can have on this world as a football player right now and in the immediate future, but eventually something far bigger than that.
Yeah, really well said. I can remember choosing my college, Trent, and I wanted to go to Notre Dame. They turned me down, so I said I'm going to go to whatever school plays them the most. And I went to Pitt. And so to your point of like these high school young men have these dreams and hang on to them and go for them and chase them. And I think it's critical. And so I want to transition to, as you've gotten older, you've got 2 daughters in college athletics. You've got one falling in high school. How valuable have you found? And here's a guy who's played for a long time in the league, been on Monday Night Football, been on these big stages. Has the trait of listening like skyrocketed to number one for you? And where is that in your litany of things of importance when you're around other athletes and knowing that you have an impact and have the loudest voice in the room and are expected to talk the most in the room? Do you feel as though listening is one of the key traits for you to actually educate the most effectively?
Listening, learning, trying to become a learner. I know a lot about football and quarterbacking especially. I've devoted my life to it. I mean, I would argue I've studied the position of quarterback more than any human on the planet. But I don't know everything. I don't even know close to everything. I learn from you. I learn from our coaches. I learn from kids. I'm trying to always learn something. It's harder these days, especially if you want to learn about politics. Like, where do you go that's balanced? It's really hard to find the right things to learn from, but when you find them, you grab hold of them. And yeah, listening is a huge part of listening. I think as you asked about the girls and what I've learned through raising competitive kids, I'll have 3 Division I full ride scholarship daughters in volleyball. And I'm not bragging about that. They've just done a nice job. But I think the biggest thing I've learned through parenting them is by helping give them perspective. on the long tail of this journey on life has kept all three of them very process driven, very free to work through challenges because they're not consumed with the moment. And more than anything else, allow them to have joy. You know, the thing I'm most excited, all their accolades and all the things they've accomplished and will continue to accomplish is, if you go watch my three daughters play volleyball, anybody in the world could watch. They're having fun. They're enjoying it. They love their teammates. They're enjoying this moment. And I say that because I think that's what I would want every young kid to have in their competitive journey, is the joy of playing the game, the joy of being around your teammates, the joy of bouncing back after a setback, the joy of overcoming something with a group of people, the joy of having really tough times, tough losses, injuries, whatever, but the joy of coming back from those and experiencing success after something like that happens. So listening, learning, and sharing perspective. I would say that's kind of where my athletic journey has brought me now and how I'm trying to help others.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite words now. I like texting quarterbacks that we've had at the Elite 11 after the weekend and say, joy meter, 1 to 10, what'd you have over the weekend? And it's fun. So as we talk about the position of quarterback, I want to nerd out on this for a second. As you just referenced, you study the game as well, and I think I agree with you better than anyone in the biz. We talked over the last probably 5 years, and I can remember seeing it a decade ago at a camp on TCU's campus saying, oh, wow, I could feel 7-on-7. Here comes the spread. And you saw it at Oregon. You saw it at a few teams. Now all of a sudden, you know, air raid principles, the spread principles, quarterbacks in the shotgun. I think Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, and Pat Mahomes had 14 combined snaps under center in their college careers collectively. The position's changed. Where do you think the position now allows for the greatest growth as the game changes and as concepts become more of like what we see on Fridays and Saturdays with teams in the National Football League? Where do you think the biggest room for growth is as these players are much more accelerated skill-wise than they were back when you were playing?
All right, well, let's dig deep for a second. I was actually with a quarterback last night, fizzled out in his college career, is wildly successful now and an awesome human. But we were talking about the amount of throws he had from the time he was 12 to the time he took his last snap in college football. And he's a 3-sport athlete. 7-on-7 really wasn't vogue back then. So we broke it down to, okay, let's just go. We're in the fall. Summer camp starts. We have 2 practices a day. How many practices are you throwing a football each practice? Let's call it 150. How many real reps? Probably 35 to 40 of real team or 7-on-7 or 1-on-1 reps each practice. So you start multiplying that out through the rest of the season, through his 4 years in high school, and then his college career. And whatever that number is, I'm not going to get too specific here. What I will say is now we're at that sweet spot. It's the first generation of quarterback that's been playing year-round quarterback since they were 10, 11, 12. 7-on-7, passing camps, Elite 11s, whatever you want to call it, just the general spring opportunity to play football. You can still be a baseball player, you can still play basketball, but you're going to play some 7-on-7. I would argue that these quarterbacks have thrown 50,000 more footballs than the quarterback that I was talking to last night. 100,000 more than I did. They've had more opportunities to be the quarterback. And being the quarterback is, yes, throwing a ball. It's reading the defense. It's making a call at the line of scrimmage. It's handling some drama with your teammate. It's communicating with the coach. It's making a decision. Do I throw it there or do I throw it here? It's just being the quarterback. I say all that to say that they're so far more advanced than 10 years ago of quarterbacks that you can do so much more. You can just do so much more. And you're absolutely right. The air raid, the spreads, tempo. You can go on and on and on with innovations in football in the passing game. Combine that with the rules changes that have made it harder for defense to defend this stuff. And it is just such a cool progression to see the explosion of good quarterbacks, the explosion of offense, and it's only going to keep growing. Saying all of that, at the end of the day, if it's 3rd and goal from the 8, I don't care what your system is. I don't care who your dudes are. I don't care what it is to throw the ball across the goal line and to throw a guy open or to throw it early, or to manipulate it and put just enough air on it that it gets above the defender's hands and drops down to the back end line. That is where guys can continue to get better, when they become less dependent on their scheme and more dependent on their ability to throw a football exactly the way their mind's eye says they want to throw it. I would say that's the number one thing you can continue to look for. Number two, they still believe it's the most influential position in sports. People always say importance. I don't know I don't know if that's true or not, but I know that nobody influences the shape of a team more than the quarterback does, because he touches the ball and he makes more decisions, and he's just more involved in the game than anybody else is. And the decisions he makes with the ball will dictate so many other people in the building, not just his coaches, but the secretaries, everybody. If he doesn't play good, they're gone. So it's such an influential position that decision making is paramount. And you make so many decisions in the course of a game, and start multiplying those decisions out on how many you make in practice and how many you make in the locker room. The decisions of how you say stuff to the media, the decisions of how you handle stuff in the classroom, the decisions of how you handle the culture of your school, high school or college, and treating women or treating teachers or whatever it is. The decisions you make shape the culture of the program and the university or high school that you're in more than any other position. So the ability to locate, manipulate a football anywhere you want, and the decisions that you make will ultimately prove to how successful you're going to be and your teams are going to be as a quarterback.
Yeah, well said. I was talking to a friend of ours, Coach Edwards, Herm Edwards from Arizona State, at Media Days in the summer. And I'll never forget it. He talked about bringing back the huddle. And excuse me. I'll start that again. I can remember over the summer I was talking to Herm Edwards, coach at Arizona State, and he talked about bringing back the huddle. And I thought it was fascinating what he said was, with all the spread, with all the up-tempo, with all the signs and the checks to the sideline, we're losing in football the ability for one guy to look at 10 others and 10 others to look back and have complete silence and him say, hey, I need you to block for me here, or hey, run this route, or whatever the things that happen. And there's a lot that can happen in that huddle. And I thought it was really interesting, whereas the position is growing as you reference, and the reps are growing, and the talent is growing, is the communication and leadership in a society which the numbers are truth tellers in terms of teenagers are having less sex, drinking less, not socializing as much as they did back in the day. And those, to me, all point to we're in a society that's looking down at a device versus looking at somebody in the eye. And I thought that was interesting. I never thought about that around the huddle. And I love what we do in terms of interpersonal communication at the Elite 11, and teams are doing leadership exercises throughout training camp and the off season. But I think that's an area that I think is going to come back, because I do think there was a 5 to 7 year window where we lost that, and guys are struggling to find their voice at the quarterback position now, I think more than ever. I'd be curious if you'd agree with that, and if not, why?
I think, 8 years ago, I was with Herm. I thought one of the worst things that was happening to football was the lack of huddles. I think so much good goes on in a huddle. I think I talked to, again, I listened and I learned that there were people that valued that interpersonal communication as much as I did, but didn't think that the huddle had to be the only way to accomplish that. That you could gain so much tactical advantage by not huddling, by getting more plays, by playing with tempo, to getting the defense to declare what they're going to do, getting getting defined looks to play again, simplifying the game, yada, 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 that it was worth the risk, and that you had to be conscious, and you had to make a concerted effort to make sure, though, that your quarterback was finding his voice elsewhere, that there was that interpersonal communication between right tackle and, wide receiver. Maybe it's on the sideline instead of the huddle. I think the bigger picture when it comes to what Herm said, and Herm and I have had this talk, this is an issue in football, is you have to create a culture on your football team that allows for some healthy conflict, because a lot of what goes on in the huddle is healthy conflict. Guys learning how to deal with conflict correctly. It is that accountability is a big word. You have to go in that huddle and look guys in the eyes if you just jumped off sides and cost your team field position, or turned a 3rd and 2 into 3rd and 7. It's the motivation, inspiration opportunity that you can have with guys. But there's other ways to create that. And you have to create a culture on your football team where they're still having that. Now, if you're going to the sideline and it's an extension of a no huddle on the sideline and people aren't communicating, if your coaches don't create an opportunity for you as players to have a voice, whether it's on the sideline or at halftime, pregame, postgame, midweek, whatever it is, then I think there's an issue. But I don't think we necessarily have to huddle on the football field if we're huddling in life.
Yeah.
I think that's the bigger thing here is, are we huddling enough in life? I mean, people probably don't know, but me and you hang up the phone when we talk, we say we love each other. Why? Because we've huddled in life. We've done life together. We deeply respect one another. We've had the hard talks. We've disagreed on stuff. And the net of that, because we've taken the time, is we deeply, deeply value each other. And that's called love. And we can express it. And we need to teach young people that they can have those same type of relationships.
I love that. Last couple, we'll get you out of here. I wanted to get your state on the game. You're in that generation where, probably that next group of people, about 10 years older than you, that they're suffering from CTE, and it's being attributed to football. We see targeting is clearly a huge issue in college football, and this year, elements of the National Football League. I'm curious if you're worried about this game and your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, that's a loaded conversation. I think that the efforts made to make the game safer are really good. The overall conversation around it. I think let's be very specific. The targeting, the use of the head as a weapon. I can't believe it wasn't addressed 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, because that just makes sense. However, if you play football, you're going to get hurt. Doesn't mean you're going to get CTE. Doesn't mean you're going to get brain damage, but you are going to get hurt. It's a physical game, and you're going to get hurt. And to legislate rules into the game that are trying to prevent overall injuries is silly. What we're seeing happen in the quarterback in the NFL is just silliness. Some of it's hyper reactive. Here's the argument I make all the time. And somebody please hit me on Twitter or do something if I'm wrong here, but I've yet to be wrong on this one. Show me the quarterbacks are actually getting injured less. We've made every effort to protect them, and the game has suffered because of it. But somebody show me some data that quarterbacks are injured less, because Deshaun Watson's injured right now. Jimmy Garoppolo's out for the season. Josh Allen's injured. Ryan Tannehill's injured. There's a lot of guys injured in college football. Guys are still getting injured. It's football. You're going to get injured. By trying to not let guys land on them or make the target the size of a typewriter is not the way to do it. It's too hyper-reactive. Now, going back to your original question, am I scared? CTE, brain damage? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's science out there saying that CTE is an imminent disease. I think a narrative got started, unfortunately, that you get a concussion and you're going to have CTE. And again, that's just not true. So I'm scared that I had 14 concussions. I'm scared that my body got beat up pretty bad. I'm scared that I can't go play ball in the front yard because I have a fake knee and I'm going to have to get another fake knee. I'm scared that I'm not going to play golf with my grandkids. Yeah, I think those are real fears that I have. Would I do it all over again? Probably, because it's taught me so much. My journey's been so fruitful. It's given my family so much. I don't know how else to answer that question. Being as honest as I possibly can be, I think my pushback is this group out there that is saying football is bad and that you're going to have brain damage because your helmet hits another person's helmet. And there's too many other smart people out there that are saying, no, that's a lie. And there's enough science to say that that is not true. And let's not overreact. Let's not take away a game that's so good, that's so much good for so many people, because some people are saying that it's ruining lives.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I mean, I've always said it and we've talked about it, but I think football has saved and changed my life. I don't know if I would have went to college, or I clearly wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if it wasn't. And I think it's the greatest teacher and the ultimate team sport. That being said, Trent, identity is a big issue that we talk about. We've touched upon that. This conversation, I think, revolved around that to a certain degree. You had people telling you were growing up, hey, you're tight end outside backer, and a couple, three specifically said, we think you can play quarterback. Same thing happened as you went through every stage of your life. Then you went to ESPN and you were the top dog there. And now you're obviously continually influencing the grassroots element of football greater than I think anybody is. That being said, around the word of identity, what's been the most difficult element for you? Because you've gone through so many, as you referenced earlier, highs and lows, through things throughout your professional and personal life. Where do you net out on that word when you hear identity?
Without getting too preachy, it's not who we are. It's what's been done for us. I think when your identity is what you've done, you miss the point. It's what's been done for us. And I'll let people dive deeper into that. But your identity can't be anything you've done personally. It's got to be what's been done for you. And let me hit one more thing, because what I said a couple minutes back could be highly controversial. It goes back to the listening and learning. I've read a lot of the science, the early stuff that came out on CT. The NFL does a great job of trying to educate us, and there was a lawsuit and all these different things going on. But there's also other people, and Merrill Hodge and Dr. Cummings have written a book called Brainwashed. And before anybody jumps on one side or the other of this argument, please read both sides. Take all the information in. And you can get this book, Brainwashed. It's out in stores now on Amazon. And it'll give you the other side to the CTE argument. And it'll give you other science that's coming out. And I just want everybody, before you, right, don't just watch Fox News. Don't just watch CNN News. Watch both. If we're talking about CTE, learn about both sides of this before you start making decisions on whether your kids play football or whether football's evil or whether football is great. I think that you got to have all the information.
I love it. All right, last three quick ones before we let you out of here, man. Curious now at this phase of your life, what is it that you're seeking?
I'm in that weird stage of my life where I'm close to being an empty nester. Our kids have been such a huge part of our life. We haven't been helicopter or lawnmower parents, but we've been very involved in we've tried to be a great support system to our daughters. We've tried to help them chase their dreams, and now they're growing up. And my oldest is probably going to get married here in the next few years, you would think. And, the youngest is going to go off to college, and really wrestling. My wife and I are really wrestling on what does halftime look like? What's the second half of our life look like? And I think what I'm seeking is impact. more than anything. You know, for so long I've been wrapped up, passionately pursuing to have a positive impact in the Elite 11 kids, the grassroots space, and my own kids. And at some point, you know, I'm going to be too old and crusty and not be able to have impact with youth, which is fine. It'll be somebody else's job to come along and do that. But where can we have really dynamic impact in making this world a better place? Because, again, without making this a political conversation, I'm as about a middle of a person as you'll ever meet. We've had this conversation. But it's really ugly. This is as ugly as a time as I've seen in my life. I've talked to my mentors who are in their 70s. They say it's about as ugly and hateful time as they've ever seen. And we need people that are willing to impact this world and make it better, in a lot of different ways. And my wife and I want to have impact, even after parenting our kids and sending them off and after my impact is over with Elite 11.
Speaking of Elite 11, what would you say now entering, I believe this is your 9th season we have coming up, what would you, if you were talking directly to a 16-year-old kid who's going to go compete on the regional, dream about being a part of this group, what would you say the purpose of your role in Elite 11 is?
Well, I think it's changed. I think a couple of years ago I transitioned to, I really wanted the coaches to have a more of a voice, not be the primary voice. I think we have such a great staff. They're younger than me. They probably relate to the kids a little bit better than me at times. But my primary role is to give them the tools through our program and through the coaches and through all the resources to give them the best chance to reach their potential. Give them more tools in the toolbox, both as football players and as people. And again, I think perspective. I think you've noticed me the last couple of years that I just want them to have a great day. Okay, let's put that in perspective. They had a bad day, let's put that in perspective. You know, if you just have perspective and context to all you do, you'll be able to much better enjoy your journey. But when you're reactive and when things lack perspective, then your journey doesn't become quite as fun.
I love it. And if you were to finish the sentence, how would you do it? It all comes down to...
You know, you know me, I don't like simple answers. I think it all comes down to how you better impact this world. There's a lot of different ways of doing that, but it all comes down to impact, positive impact.
Yeah, I love that. And how do you feel about the word limits?
I don't think there are many. I know you believe the same thing. I think human potential is far greater than many people give it credit for. I think we're capable of incredible things. Ordinary people are capable of incredible things, but too often we put limits on what certain people are able to accomplish.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we accomplished this, man. It's been 3 years in the making, and I've always enjoyed spending time with you, and this convo was just another notch in that belt, man. I love you, man. Thanks for the time.
Love you too, brother.
All right, there it is. Trent Dilfer on the Yogi Roth Show. Make sure you subscribe, rate, review, and let us know what you think. And if you want some more insight on college football, sign up for the How Great Is Ball newsletter right over at yogiroth.com. Well, that's it for today. You know how we end this thing, that the only limits that we have in life are the ones we set ourselves. Peace.